Right, guys, hopefully you've been keeping up with my videos. I can't really backtrack and tell you everything on how I got here today. So this is concerning one of my last videos, and it's about Daniel's 70th week. So we know that God assigned Israel 70 weeks, okay, were determined upon them. That's 490 days. But then God turned those weeks into years. So it's 490 years. And they say that there's a week left, right? 7 days, which is actually 7 years, because he turned the days into years. And whether that's true or not, I'm looking at this principle that I want to share with you guys. And it's a biblical principle of extrapolation, but really it's almost, I like to describe it as the golden spiral, the Fibonacci sequence as we call it today, where in prophecy things just keep getting larger and larger and larger and larger. It's expansive. It's expansive. Prophecy expands. Just like Christ was the man-child, one person, one body. Now we are his body, and that pattern still pertains to us as the man-child being caught up and the woman have 42 months. That's in 2025, but that's another video. So taking that principle into consideration about Daniel's 70th week, the 7 years that Israel has left, supposedly, regardless, it's the principle we're looking at. Well, this is what I see. We know that in 2 Peter 3:8, that God says that a day is as 1,000 years with the Lord, and 1,000 years is as a day with the Lord. So we take Daniel's 70th week, which started out as 7 days, then God turned it into 7 years. But what if we turned that into 7,000 years? You see, there were 6 days of creation, as I explained before, and the seventh day is a day of rest, which is the millennium reign of Jesus Christ. So you have 7,000 years looking at it from that perspective. So when we look at Daniel's 70th week, I see it as another way to look at it, extrapolated like that, as 7,000 years. And the reason that I see it as 7,000 years is because there is, from the fall of Adam to the end of the millennium, death for 7,000 years. And that is kind of synonymous with Daniel's 70th week, right? And what is Daniel's 70th week about, partially? Well, it's about, the powers that be on earth building the Tower of Babel. Remember, Lucifer said, "I'll be like the Most High," and trying to do that. But what we see is that is a continuation of patterns in the past in the Bible. We know this. Genesis chapter 11. What are they trying to do? The same type of thing. Build a tower to heaven. However they were doing that, they all spoke with one language, which I believe that's possibly mathematics. Mathematics is one language, is a language, and I believe that in mathematics that there's no misunderstandings. We can all speak with one language. Just like the heavens, the sun, the moon, and the stars are there for signs, seasons, days, and years. So they're speaking a language to the entire earth. That's another reason why nobody will be without with an excuse on Judgment Day, because God put the sun, the moon, and the stars there to speak to us. That is Psalms chapter 19. Okay, you can read it on your own time. But so looking at that 7,000 years, right? We started right here around Adam, and we go down the line, and instead of 7 days, and then instead of 7 years, we look at 7,000 years. In my eyes, the way I look at it now, because of 2 Peter 3:8. And really, we know that in heaven, I've drawn this pattern before, but in heaven, that's actually 7 days, okay? And so it's almost like time is compressed in heaven, right? So you have 7 days, 6 days of creation, the seventh day of rest, 7,000 years on earth. So you have a type of projection that when time is projected down here and things, it's 7,000 years. But in heaven, it's really just 7 days. So not only am I looking at the 7 days as 6 days of creation and the seventh day rest, I'm looking at also extrapolating Daniel's 70th week, which started out as 7 days, then God turned it into 7 years, and I'm turning it into 7,000 years. okay, by God's principle in 2 Peter 3:8. Because what do we see in Daniel's 70th week? This repetitive pattern of what they did in Genesis chapter 11 and what they've done after that is that they're trying to build a Tower of Babel to heaven inside the temple, which is us, and other ways through technology and what the fallen angels have taught man and everything. And again, we see this pyramid pattern that I've shown you guys that that I see. You know, we have the pyramids all across the earth in all countries or continents. We were lied to in school saying that everybody was separated. That's a darn lie. They all have the same pyramids, right? They were all being visited by the same spirit, whether it was fallen angels and sometimes God and all this stuff. And I think that the pyramid pattern actually comes from like this idea of the compression of time and things in heaven. And when it unfolds down here, it's like a projection because it's extrapolated to 7,000 years from 7 days in heaven. And this is the type of pattern that you would get if you would draw a linear line from beginning to end here on earth of the 7,000 years. In heaven, if you draw that linear line, it'd be like a tiny dot compressed compared to the amount of time that it would look like down here. And so I think that's where they get the pyramid idea from, is the way that this place unfolded. See, there's time in heaven is just much different. And they kind of show you a glimpse of that in the movie Contact. And that's interesting, the movie Contact, because they're showing you profound things, but they're mixing it up and lying a little bit about it with a lot of the stuff in there. But they're showing you some of the technology, like the wheels within the wheels. They're showing you the time difference, as when you're in the wheels within the wheels, the time is different than outside of it. So that's kind of showing you a heaven and earth picture. So, I mean, they know a lot. Make no mistake about it. The powers that be, way the thought, they know a lot. But just like the Bible says, Lucifer corrupted his wisdom. Okay, so the wisdom is there, lots, but it's corrupted. Okay, us as Christians, we don't purposely try to, somebody's going down the wrong path, we do our best to just, do our best in anything that we can do the right thing. So that can mean a lot of different things in different ways to different people. But anyways, so I see this as Daniel's 70th week. I can see it the whole 7,000 years. And that's a picture of death, blood for 7,000 years. And it's interesting that a woman's cycle, the average days is 7 days. And what is that? That's the woman bleeding. Well, what happened at the fall of the garden? God said that you will have greater pain in childbirth. That's probably, the blood came into the picture. Blood, symbolic of death, symbolic of a lot of things. But in this sense, symbolic of death, right? For 7,000 years. You see that? And so that's how I see it. I can almost see this, and then I could see this right here. Like this repeating pattern on earth through the 7,000 years of Daniel's 70th week, trying to happen, trying to give birth. And finally at the end, they come the closest, right? But then Jesus comes back right at the end, right? Not at the end of 7,000 years, but at the end of 6,000 years, right? So it's trying to do it again, and then he comes back at around 6,000 years. So I see this pattern, right? And that's how I'm looking at the Bible, with more, it's unlocking, it's giving me more of a heavenly spiritual perspective. When you look at things like this is more, I think, this is one of the ways that God looks at things, from heaven. And the Bible gives us a glimpse. The Bible gives us a glimpse of how God looks at things, right? It really does. Because in the Bible, everything's already finished, right? When you're saved, according to Paul in the book of Romans, you're already justified. You're already seated in heavenly places with Christ, Ephesians 2:6. So we as normal humans, before we were believers, before we had any spiritual knowledge and understanding, we didn't ever look at things like that. We took everything as from point A to point B. Just like it is down here in time. Point A to point B. That's how we look at things, linear. Right? But God doesn't look at things linear. He looks at things, much larger in scope, way more dimensional. Right? So we're looking at what's in front of us. God can see the end of the picture. That's why understanding God's foreknowledge or future knowledge is hard for some people, and this is where we get into election. Now, why does God pick some and not others? Well, because he can see the end of the story. He could have just picked somebody and not picked somebody because he didn't like them at all. I mean, people have no problem with us having free will. Like, we can do whatever we want. We can pick whoever we want to hang out with. But when you tell them God has the same, they go, no, God can't. If somebody believes that he can't refuse them salvation. Really? So God doesn't have free will, but we do? You see, it's so backwards, some people, and it's much deeper than Calvinism. It's just through God's foreknowledge. And it's through God's sovereignty. Calvinism does say sovereignty, but predestination and election were around way before John Calvin, okay? That's what the world calls, the world makes up names for things like lordship, salvation, and free grace, and Calvinism. Look, really, honestly, it's just called God's grace. It's called God's workmanship, Ephesians 2:10. And the last one, Calvinism, is called election and predestination. That's it. God's foreknowledge and his sovereignty. That's it. But they put on these terms that just divide people, right? It just creates little divisions. It's just other denominations. That's all it is. It's just to divide the Christians, right? Now, division is okay, but I'm saying the way that they're doing it is not the right way to divide. They're doing it on purpose. They're making it just like politics. They made Christianity. So you have a left and a right and the center and liberal and all this stuff, when really you're just dividing people over nonsense, and it's way bigger than that, it's way deeper than that, but it's a tactic from the devil, because the devil knows that Jesus said that a house divided cannot stand, something like that, right? So if you just divide everybody up over stupid things and just don't realize how God works, which is, look, we all have our 2 cents in this. Let's all put it together. And we don't all have to believe the same thing, but let time and let God figure it out. Right? When I hear new things, like probably when you guys hear new revelations on my channel, you're like, wait, whoa. I got to research this a little bit. I got to think about it. Right? Because some of the things that I get, I'm like, oh my gosh. But then when you hear it, that's okay. You got to give it time. Right? Give the Spirit time to manifest and to show you things, and give yourself time to research things. That's normal. That's how it's supposed to be. You're not just supposed to, usually. I mean, sometimes you can, but sometimes you can't just believe something that you hear that's brand new, right? But don't reject it unless it's way out there. But first, sometimes you have to give it time. So that's how it should work. But rather than understanding God's grace and how God works and his character and everything, everybody just wants to divide people into these little boxes. You're a Calvinist, okay, you're a lordship, you're free grace, you're a Methodist, you're a Baptist, you believe that, it's just like, it's a bigger picture than that. So it's just a tactic of the devil, and there is reasons to divide, but like I said, what's going on right now is it just creates immature people, right? So that's how I kind of look at it. I'm getting a larger scope of everything when I use God's principles. And like I said, the biggest principles that I've been using so far that God has been showing me is Ecclesiastes 1:9 and Isaiah 46:10 and I'm drawing a blank now. 2 Peter 3:8. God declares the end from the beginning. A day is as 1,000 years with the Lord, 1,000 years is as a day with the Lord, and what was done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. All those principles, those are heavenly principles, okay? And when you use those, you can see cool things like this, right? And that's where I wanted to share that with you guys. Now, another revelation that I was thinking about and I had that was kind of in my mind is that the apple, okay? I've done a lot of videos on the apple, but there's more to it. We get to the apple, and we know that Israel is the apple of God's eye, right? So one of the things that you can see that the apple is a torus field, right? A torus field is like this. There's two circles. You've all done those things in school where it's like this. You make a circle, and then you make another circle, right? And then you put the things you agree with, and then this on this side, right? Almost like the MasterCard logo. They probably did it on purpose, right? But that's what an apple is. You got the two circles, right? You can see it, right? And you got so if it went through, it'd be like this. You just keep on with this, and then it'd be like this, right? And then you got the torus field on this side and on this side, all right? So I think that what was I going to say? So I believe that this follows every believer, but especially Israel. That you're the apple in this one right here, right? So in an apple, in the center, in the very center, you have seeds, right? Aren't we gardeners planting seeds in the center, right? So that's very interesting to me. And then if you bite into an apple, right? If you bite into an apple, you know the Apple logo, hence the Apple logo, right? You bite into that apple, it's white. So the white light in the center, but in the middle it's seeds, but on the outside of that it's white light. Just like the sun in the sky. Inside the sun it's actually white light, but we see it as yellow golden light. That's my next point. So then once you bite into it past the skin, because see, the light is concealed in us right now. This is what happened at the garden, I believe, is that the light was concealed under the skin. That's how come they knew that they were naked. They weren't clothed with light anymore like God. The light went internal. Hence Proverbs 25:2. It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, the light, but it's the honor of kings to search out a matter. That's what we're doing. We're searching out the light that is concealed inside us. Get that? And also that goes for the New and the Old Testament. And the New Testament is the new man. The Old Testament is the old man. So the New Testament is the spiritual heavenly, and the Old Testament is the old and physical. So when you take the New Testament and you go into the Old Testament, which is the skin, right? And you find out all the mysteries. That's how you do it. Because the New Testament gives you like the decoder ring, the new man. Right, so that's what that's about. God conceals it in the Old Testament. So that's Proverbs 25:2. And it's everything is multi-dimensional. It's multi-layered. So when you bite into an apple, you get the white light on the inside, right? But then if you let the apple set for about 5-10 minutes, what does it turn? It turns golden, right? So the white light on the center, if you could skin the whole thing, now it's the color of golden. Just like the sun, just like us on the inside. You have the white light in the center. Then the next layer, you have the golden light. But then you have the skin that covers it. Now, what's the most famous apple color? Red. Well, Adamah, actually means the red man. So he was the color red. So that's why I think that if you could see Adam back in the day, he was like the Native Americans are considered red. The red man. Remember the tobacco said the red man, right? So I think the original Adam was the red man. His skin after he fell, right? After he fell. Because before that he was probably covered with light, just like God, clothed with light. And so when you look at an apple, right, I see all that. You know, and then remember, Israel is the apple of God's eye. So we're grafted in today as Gentiles. So we probably got some of this going on in the spirit, but Israel for sure is the apple of God's eye. And then the eye, you've seen my videos on, that's probably referring to the pineal, right? The third eye where the crystals are, and the white light hits the crystals in the center of your brain and emanates the 7 colors of the rainbow, hence the fruits of the spirit, all the colors of fruit, right? The 7 colors of the rainbow hit the crystals in the pineal gland and emanate throughout your body. Probably goes in the front of your head, which is called the Christus Galley, the Christ Galley, right? That's where David hit Goliath with the stone. Read the Bible. It says he hit him with the stone, hence hardening the heart, the stone, a hardened heart. He hit him with the stone right in the middle between the eyes, the Christus Galley or Christ Galley. And if you keep going back to the center of the brain, you hit the third eye, the pineal gland. Jesus said if your eye be single, then your body is full of light. That means that these eyes, you're using them, but he's talking about the center eye. When that's turned on single, then then your body is full of light. But if your eye be full of darkness, how great the darkness be. You see that? So there's actual literal light that goes in there and reflects, but it translates to spiritual also. You see, there's more than one meanings to all these things. So, so yeah, this is the Apple logo, and it's interesting. The original Apple logo had all the 7 colors of the rainbow, right? We get the little connection there, right, with the light and everything like that. The first Apple computer was $666.66, right? So they got a lot of knowledge, they got a lot of wisdom, but the problem is that they're following Lucifer's way, and the Bible says that Lucifer had so much wisdom, but it was corrupted. Alright guys, I want to share with you something scary. And that is that when we look at the pattern of Elijah, and I always talk about Elijah being a type and shadow of the body of Christ, ascending, going to heaven, and then Elisha being the remnant of the seed of Israel, the woman that goes on for 3 to 3.5 years. And that is true. And he is also a type and shadow of the man-child in Revelation 12, ascending, and then there being 42 months after, because we are the man-child in symbolism now. So that pattern is for us. Like I said, the man-child was one body, Christ, his body. Now we are his body. So that is a pattern for us. But that's all that I've talked about with that type and shadow and pattern. The scary part about this pattern is the whole story, because I think the whole story pertains to our pattern as well, the rest of the story. And what do we see there? Well, just to backtrack and tell you a little bit about the story of Elijah, it is, what happened is that he went and he basically, as a prophet of God, showed 850 of the other teams, the Magi and the sorcerers and all these guys, a greater miracle. God showed a greater miracle and made the other prophets look stupid. And so then the other prophets, all the other team, were beheaded basically. And after that had happened, after God had made a show of them openly, kind of like the cross, right? We have all these patterns connecting. Elijah was so excited to go back, he was running back to tell his people, okay, after all of this. And it didn't take. It didn't have any effect on them. Just like the preaching of the cross is foolishness to them that don't believe, the same idea. So you could say that those of us who are excited, like in the beginning of we're like, oh my gosh, and we're still getting revelation, we go back to people, and just in general even, but family, friends, people we don't know, and it has almost no effect on them. So what's the pattern there? Well, this is the scary part. So even though the people that Elijah went back were his people, his kindred, none of them went in the rapture with Elijah, did they? They were stuck at home still. Elijah is the only one that was raptured in the whirlwind, and Elisha was left, symbolic of, that's symbolic of the remnant of the woman, the seed of the woman. So think about that pattern for a second. Did all of his brethren, they were his brethren, that it had no effect upon, did they go in the rapture as well? No. No, just Elijah. Think about, that's scary, because that shows a pattern for today. How many people will actually be raptured up? Well, who is the gospel? When I say the gospel, that's a very broad, wide thing. I'd say the word of God. Who is it having an effect on it? Who is it not? I'm not saying people have to be perfect in their understanding and all these things, but do people even care? Which people care? Which people don't? Which people are listening? Which people are not? Which people can hear God? And which people cannot? You see? And I think when we think of it like that, it brings a lot of questions as to who's actually going in the rapture.